I would do next, and I like that. I've got one here. It might take 2 weeks. If I'm not too wordy, I might finish it today. It's kind of doubtful. It's a little longer for me to finish today. Take my time on it, but I'm going to do a study on the seventh day. The first YouTube video I ever put up back in 2013, I believe it was, somewhere in that time frame, was called the Sabbath Sabotage. And at that time, I had some folks in the church that were bent on the Sabbath day. And it's not that I don't care. You can, keeping the Sabbath pretty much just laying around, sitting on your hind end doing nothing all day is, about what it boils down to. I mean, you can include worship into that day, of course, but it's really just about doing nothing and resting. And who doesn't believe in that? It's when you impose it on everybody else that they have to do it that it becomes a problem. And it becomes a problem doctrinally. So I'm not against the Sabbath. I've laid around many a Saturday and done nothing. But the Bible's specific about how to deal with this day, and basically we're just going to go back from the beginning and see what the Lord has to say about it. Turn to Genesis chapter 2. And let's start at verse 1. We're going to read 3 verses there. And I'll tell you how that, the Seventh-day Adventists, how that came about with them. He says, "Thus the heavens and earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made." So we know from this passage of Scripture that God sanctified the seventh day. We know that, okay? Now, without having any real understanding of the Bible, if you were to first read that, where God sanctified that, you'd have thought that he told Adam that, and Adam took out a crayon and an old fig leaf, and probably had to make the crayon out of earwax or something, I don't know. And he wrote down that God hallowed the seventh day. Because we don't have anything written by Adam, right? So God says he sanctified the seventh day. It did not say when he told us that he sanctified the seventh day, or who he told, right? I mean, that's something that needs to be cleared up. And the reason I say that is when you know does matter. And something can be going on without you knowing it. Yeah. Now, there's some men that just can't believe that God can think ahead like that, because I would know, because I'm smart. So they think that they know better than God, and God's got something going on the whole time, like the church age. When very few men, it was revealed to Paul. A lot of them didn't know what was going on. Wilt thou again restore the kingdom to Israel? Listen, in Acts 2, the church begins. God knows something that nobody else knows, and he hasn't revealed it yet. It's called the manifold wisdom of God. It's like folding a piece of paper. When you got one sheet of paper, but when you fold it so many times, open back up, you got all these folds. That's God's wisdom, man. It is just astronomical. You couldn't possibly play a game of chess with God and think that you're going to come out ahead. He's 5 million moves ahead of you. And what I'm getting at is that something can be going on and nobody know it until God reveals it. And heretics never seem to understand that. There's some Baptists that don't seem to understand that. And some folks that are splitting scriptures they shouldn't be splitting, and just creating a mess. But anyway, how the Seventh-day Adventist came along is actually a Baptist. Yep, a guy named Miller. And from what I understand, man, Joe, we're going to take it out on you. I want you to pay reparations for what this guy did. Anyway, and they were called, yeah, that was, They were called Millerites. And what he did was he took a passage over there in the book of Daniel where it talks about 2,300 days. It's in Daniel 8. 2,300 days, and he made it, well, hey, it's a days a year, you know, each day for a year. I mean, you can find that. See, you might be able to find the proof text for that, but you got to be careful that not every day in the Bible is a year. Sometimes it's a day. You know, like evening and the morning were the first day. You don't make that a year, do you? You don't make that 1,000 years because you have evening and morning. He's telling you it's a 24-hour day, okay? So he made that 2,300 years, which happened to be up around the time he's walking around. So he makes this interpretation that, you know, the Lord's coming back on this certain day. Well, it didn't happen. He admitted that it didn't happen, that he's evidently interpreted it wrong. He even guessed, I think they waited 1 year, then I think they waited another year because he thought he might have miscalculated something and it didn't happen. No second advent. So that thing kind of went dead till along came Ellen G. White. And Ellen G. White, Gould is her middle name. What's that tell you? Ellen Gould White. What does that mean? Anyway, is that short for multiple Goulds or I don't know. Anyway, but Ellen G. White came along and resurrected that man's misconception of Scripture. And she kind of ran with it. Well, she needed something else, you know. She needed something else to make it kind of, you know, to kind of form this group. And she had a vision, you know. She had a vision and she saw the 10 Commandments. And the fourth one was illuminated. You know, the Sabbath day, keep it holy. And I'm thinking to myself, just thinking to myself, why would God illuminate that one when the first and greatest one is the first one? What? Why illuminate one where some lazy bum lays around all day and does nothing over one that says, thou shalt love the Lord thy God? That kind of makes sense to me. So, me thinks that was the only one they could keep. That's what me thinks. I can keep that one. I can lay there in a long chair like the rest of them. Mouth open, eyes just sit around doing nothing. I mean, that's really, of all the commandments that God had, wouldn't you think the Sabbath is about the easiest one to keep? There's a little preparation involved, but it's not too difficult to keep. So I think that's why it's illuminated. Because all the rest of them, they were going to break, I think. So this was the one they picked. So that's really how the seventh day came along. Now turn to Nehemiah chapter 9. The Bible doesn't leave you in the dark about whether this thing was passed down from Adam all the way to the children of Israel. You're told exactly in this passage when it was revealed, whether you like it or not, whether you understand it or not. This verse tells you when it was revealed. In Nehemiah 9:13-14, it says, is everybody there? Nehemiah 9, verse 13. Thou camest down also upon Mount Sinai and spakest with them from heaven. You all know when that happened, right? In the book of Exodus. And gavest them right judgments and true laws, good statutes and commandments. And look at it says, verse 14. And madest known unto them thy holy Sabbath. And commandest them precepts, statutes, and laws by the hand of Moses thy servant. You see that? That's when it was revealed. You have no indication anywhere in 66 chapters, 50, 60, about 66 chapters, that God's told anyone to keep the Sabbath. You said, but it says in Genesis. Who wrote Genesis? Moses. 1500 BC. 2,500 years has elapsed. And no one in that 2,500 years is told to keep the Sabbath, because that's when he reveals it, and Moses gives it to them from Sinai. He reveals it to Moses, Moses gives it to them. That's what it says. So Get out of your mind that everybody is keeping this Sabbath from Adam to Moses, because they're not. They don't even know about it. Huh? In the wilderness? Yep. So, turn, I said that. Okay. So it's pretty obvious that in 1500 BC, approximately, I'm not giving you exact dates here, around 1500 BC, that when God revealed this thing to Moses, it was a new thing. It was something that they hadn't been doing before, but they were going to be doing now. And you know, when God placed the law on man, I mean, you talk about a burden. Maybe they thought, you know, they said to him, all that thou sayest to us to do, we will do. I'm kind of paraphrasing that. It didn't work out that way. They end up just about breaking every law that God gave them. But it's pretty obvious that it was a new thing. Some were even stubborn and refused to obey the law. Turn to Numbers chapter 15. Numbers chapter 15. And look at verse 32. It says, and while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. You'd think after 2,500 years, you'd get the message. If everybody knew about it, what in the world's this guy doing? I mean, yeah, why would he go and pick up sticks on the Sabbath day? It's been established for 2,500 years. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto Moses and Aaron unto all the congregation. And they put him in ward. It means they put him in a cell. Because it was not declared what should be done to him. We don't know what to do with him. What do you mean after 2,500 years you don't know what to do with him? Doesn't this sound like a new thing? A new thing, a new law, and all of a sudden they find somebody gathering sticks and they're like, man, we gotta arrest this guy. We gotta lock him up. Why? We don't even know what to do with him. He's broken this new law called the Sabbath. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall surely be put to death. Whoa. Picking up a bunch of sticks? See what happens when you start messing with the law of God? All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died as the Lord commanded Moses. So I know one thing, that if we're supposed to keep the Sabbath, you better not break it. There better not be any exceptions, except when you're getting the ox out of the ditch, or it's some type of life-saving thing, because according to this, if you break it, you're a dead man by the law of Moses. I mean, God's the one that told Moses, stone him. Well, that means, as I understand it, and you know, Sabbath is sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. That's the seventh day. And that's not true in the sense that our sundown and the sundown, you know, when they did this, they were kind of in the land or they were in the wilderness, but they were right there in that area. It's kind of different when you're this far away. It's different hours and everything. But if you were to have to keep that Sabbath today, you couldn't start your car. Unless you got I don't know about an electric one. I've never given that thought. Nope. They don't do anything electrical. Now, these folks have been over to Jewish home during sabbatical dinner and all that stuff, you know, and they couldn't flip a switch. You can't open mail. Okay. An engine, combustion engine, so you can't start a car. Okay. Now, they do have some squirrely ways of getting around that Sabbath day's journey. Why don't you explain it? Can you explain it? You're a filthy Gentile headed for hell. You can turn on the light. It's a wire, but shopping. Yeah. Yeah, boy, yeah. Yeah. How they came up with that, I don't know. If I turn to Exodus chapter 31, now I worked with a fellow one time that he wasn't Seventh-day Adventist. He was like the Worldwide Church of God type folks, and they're Sabbath keepers. And he would go out of his way, in preparation for that day. Now, he would work that day if it was an emergency. He would work. But I just watched him every week at this dance that he went through to get ready for this Sabbath day, He's a Gentile, But we're going to find out in these passages of Scripture who the Sabbath was for. It wasn't even for you. It was for somebody else. And he says there in Exodus 31:13, "Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you." You see that? He said, it's a sign between me and you. Not me and the Gentiles, not me and the world, but me and you, talking to those Jews. If that's not clear enough, turn to Ezekiel chapter 20. Now, sadly, I've showed these verses to folks, and it's like they read it, and then it's like right back to it. Some minds you can't. For some reason, they just reject the truth, or they're not having it. This is what they know to be the truth, and they're sticking with it. Okay? Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 12. He says, moreover also, and he's speaking to the children of Israel. You can see it in the context if you want to go back and read it. Moreover also I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that does sanctify them. Okay? Now, he's not saying it's just hallowed day. He says it's a sign. It's imperative that that Jew understand that Sabbath. It's like God's telling them something. How can a weekly Sabbath, and there's more than just a weekly Sabbath. There's a weekly Sabbath, there's a monthly Sabbath, there's a yearly Sabbath, there is a half a century Sabbath, 7 times 749, 50th year's Jubilee, and then there is a millennial Sabbath. Don't you have too many of those, but we do. And each one is what? It's a day of rest. They have a month, they have a day, a month, they even have a year. You say, what do they do? Just sit around for a whole year? Well, it's not them sitting around, it's the land. The land is rest for a full year. In other words, if they're sowing this field, and what they do is you say, well, they wouldn't have any food one year. No. They rotate them. Okay? But every 7th year, they'll let this field rest, and then they'll plant this field. And then the 7th year, they let that field rest, and then they'll plant this field again. But they're to let it rest because God said let it rest. And they didn't do it. They didn't keep it. For 490 years, they never kept that Sabbath. You know how many they missed? How many Sabbaths would they have missed in 490 years? 70. You know how many years they went into captivity? 70. Because that's how many Sabbaths they missed. Do you know how many times you should forgive someone? 70 times 7. You know why that number's there? Because that's how many times God forgave Israel. He's not going to make you forgive somebody more times than he does. So when somebody offends you 490 times, on the 491th, just deck them. But that's 491 times. Because for 490 years, God forgave them, and God just waited. And on that 490th, he said, that's it. He said, you're going to captivity. Each year for the Sabbath that they broke, 70 years. That's the way that fell out. So Exodus 20, did we read 20 verse 12? Yeah, we did. Go ahead and read it. That's right. If you're going to live under the law, keep the law, if you're going to keep the Sabbath, you better keep it. And I mean to the letter. Forget about wiring around your city. Here we go. Look at verse 20. Just in case you didn't get it those other two times. It says, and hallow my Sabbaths, that they shall be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God. Well, my Bible says it's the Jew that requires a sign, and the Sabbath is a sign. And I'm like, well, how is the Sabbath a sign? Well, if you're driving down a dirt road and it says, to all the occupants of this city, bridge out. Well, just because you're from another town doesn't mean you can't read the sign, okay? Now, the reason this sign is important because it tells that Jew how long this is going to last. Now, if he would have understood, and if he'd have understood Psalms 90 and 2 Peter chapter 3, which deal with one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, he would have known that it took 6 days in the recreation and 7th is the rest. Now, those were literal days back there, 24-hour periods. But what they picture is one day with the Lord is 1,000 years. And that Sabbath is all about that thing, that creation, that rest. So you know what we know? We know there'll be 6,000 years of human history with the last 1,000 years as a day of rest called the millennium. When all the earth is at rest. He's telling that Jew, I'm not going to miss it. And I'm telling you that God's not going to miss it. He said, well, it's 2021, brother. And all I'm telling you is that God's not going to miss that thing. I don't know how the calendars are fouled up. I don't know. All I know is that God's not going to miss that day. And he's telling them, it's a sign. I'm not going to miss it. There'll be a rest on that day. And that's when this world is at rest for 1,000 years. I'll show you something else. Turn to Exodus chapter 16. This is something I haven't figured this out. I just know it exists. God did a sign every Sabbath while they were out in the wilderness. Every Sabbath. Look what he says here in Exodus 16, and let's start at verse 16. Exodus 16. 16:16. Is that right? Yeah, 16:16. It says, this is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. He's talking about the manna. And the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more and some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. This is every day they go out there, and this manna falls from heaven. And it sits there like, it's almost like a glaze on the ground, and they just scoop that stuff up, and then when the sun comes up, it just melted away. So they had to go out and get it, and get enough for the day. If you're one person, get enough for you. If you're a family of 4, you get enough for a family of 4. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. In other words, don't go out there and get you a 55-gallon barrel of it, so I'm storing up, just in case. You're a prepper at that day, You don't need to prep. God's there. He's taking care of you. Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was wroth with them. So what they had gathered that morning, they left overnight. By the following morning, there's worms crawling in it, and it stinks. It rotted. Let's go on. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread. Why? Because the Sabbath is the next day. 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses, and he said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and sieve that ye will sieve, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. So he's every Sabbath there was a sign or a wonder. Signs and wonders the Jews seek for, and they got to see a wonder every week. Because if they did it on a weekday, it rotted and stank and bred worms, but on the Sabbath it didn't. Now, think about the pot of manna that they put inside the ark. Think it bred worms and stank? Or fresh as the day they put it in there? Ooh, yeah, you didn't think about that, did you? That's something to think about. They were to put that pot of manna in there as a testimony. And I'm thinking, well, did God preserve that manna all the time that they had that thing? Kind of be silly to have it rot. Imagine something being as fresh as the day you put it in there. I mean, 200 years later, you open that thing up, and there it is, man, still as fresh as when you put it in there. Don't need no fridge. Huh? McDonald's is trying to replicate that. They're getting close. Their stuff, it will survive the apocalypse, He says, 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, it is there, in it there shall be none. So they didn't have any manna fall that 7th day. They had collected it, and God preserved it. So they saw a sign and wonder every Sabbath day. But the 7th day itself is a sign. And it's not that we can't read that sign, but we are not under the law to keep that day. We're just not. Just like we're not under the law to keep any of the new moons or the sacrificial days. How many of you kept Pentecost? How many of you kept Passover this year or last year or the year before? How about tabernacles? Anybody dwell in booths? Anybody? Of course not. Why? Well, why? Are you camping? Close second. But if you ate anything, during Passover and during tabernacles, if you were to eat regular bread that's been leavened, you would have violated the law. Matter of fact, that during that time in tabernacles, it's 7 days of unleavened bread. That's Passover. The 7 days of unleavened bread are at Passover. You couldn't eat any bread for an entire, or any bread that's got leaven in it for an entire week. Because if you're going to live in the law, the Bible says if you're going to walk in it, you got to live in it, and you're going to keep it. And you break anything, you violated it. See, God's trying to convince you you're a sinner. How them Jews got it in their mind that they were keeping it, man? Keeping what? They were violating it every time they turned around. And God put them into captivity. They're walking around like oblivious to the fact that they're breaking God's laws. You're breaking them all the time. You can't keep this under perfection. All right, turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Now we find something in the Scriptures of what the Lord did for us. Because of the work of Christ, the written law, all of it, written or engraved, is done away for those who get saved in this age. Now I need to explain that a little. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6. It says, who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth. You remember that fellow that picked up sticks? You know what killed him? Words killed him. Thou shalt not. He did it anyway, and it got him killed. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. But if the ministration of death, the law, written and engraven in stones, was glorious, and it was, when Moses came off Mount Sinai, his face was glowing. They had to put a veil over him because they were scared to death of him. I don't know if that was just radiation from the Lord he was emitting. I don't know what it was. But he was just glowing, you know. It was glorious. I mean, here that mountain's rocking and there's fire and all kinds of stuff going on, man. I mean, it was a glorious thing. So that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses for the glory of his countenance, which glory was to be done away. It wasn't going to be done away with the law. So how shall not the ministration of the Spirit be rather glorious? For if the ministration of condemnation be glory, excuse me, there, kind of cut my sentence off. Condemnation be glory, much more doth the ministration of righteousness exceeding glory. For even that which was made glorious had no glory in this respect by reason of the glory that excelleth. In other words, compared to what God was going to do, this paled in comparison to it. For if that which is done away was glorious, much more that which remaineth is glorious. Now I want you to see something. Turn to Exodus chapter 32. Exodus 32, look at verse 28. This is where they broke the commandments. So he come down from the mountain. He sees Aaron, fashioning golden calves, and he's got everybody naked, running around naked. They're all dancing and singing to Elvis Presley or something. You ain't know. I don't know what they're doing. Anyway, it says that, and the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses, because Moses comes down, he's angry. He smashes those commandments before he ever, because he'd have killed them with it. God would have to kill all of them. All he had to do is read those commandments. They were breaking them all. I mean, they had idols. Thou shalt have no other God before me. They certainly weren't loving God. They were breaking just about every commandment. It wouldn't surprise me if this is not the Sabbath day. I don't know if it was, but anyway. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and there fell the people that day about 3,000 men. You see that? 3,000 men lost their lives because of their disobedience and their worshiping of a golden calf. That's what the law did. Now turn to Acts chapter 2, verse 41. And this is the ministration of the Spirit. Let's see if I've got the right verse here. I need to move along here. 2:41. It says, then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added unto the church about what? 3,000 souls. And it was much more glorious. Because you didn't have dead men laying everywhere, violate God's law. You had saved men. They were added to the church. That was the difference between them two. Now, you want to be back under that? Have all you want. Have all you want. But know this, if you're going to live by the law, you're going to have to follow every step of it. You can't just cherry pick and choose what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. See, that's what Ellen G. White tried to do. She picked one commandment, and they couldn't even possibly keep that one. A lot more difficult than you think. You have to make up your mind that you're going to keep it to the letter. All right, let's see where I'm at here. Oh, Colossians, hold it down, ahead of myself here. Acts 15. I'm way ahead of myself. Turn to Romans 13. I'm way ahead of that. Okay. I'll read this one. You guys go to Galatians chapter 3. Actually, it's supposed to be Hosea 2:11, but no, go to Galatians chapter 3. Oh man, I skipped over about. Like I said, there's a lot more to this than you think. Hosea 2:11 says, "I will also cause all mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts." And you know what they have? They have ceased during this age. You say, well, Israel keeps the Sabbath. There's no possible way they can keep the Sabbath without the sacrificial system and God honor it. No way. So they have no king, no seraphim, they have none of the things that they need. In other words, they don't have the cherubim, they don't have the most holy place, the sacrifices, the altar. They don't have any. They don't have the priest. For many days, you know how long that's been going on? Since about 2,500. It's about 606 BC, about 2,500 years. That's how long they've been without those things. And even though they got back in the land, they didn't have everything. You know, when God set up the sacrificial system, twice he did this. I think it's only twice. When in the wilderness, the tabernacle, God kindled a fire from heaven, came down and consumed the sacrifice. And I'd have to look and see where that is. My mind's blank on that one. But then Solomon takes that little small tabernacle, he makes a temple out of it. We're talking a large-scale stationary version of what God gave him that was mobile in the wilderness. And so he has all that set up in an altar, and God answers by fire. Well, whenever God answered by fire, it's that fire that you had to keep going for every sacrifice beyond that. Whenever they traveled, you know, you can carry your fire with you. And that's what they had to do. They had to carry, I'll bet they carried bucketfuls. And they kept that fire, and then whenever they landed somewhere, God said, okay, set it up here. Then they started the fire with the original coals of what God started. Anything else was strange fire. So when Solomon, he built that temple, God did it again for him, and then they had their fire. Anything else would have been strange fire. Show me in Ezra and Nehemiah. Show me, because I've looked where God started that fire again. Not nary a sentence that God started that fire again for those sacrifices. You say, why? Because that thing's been done away with for a long time. And that Sabbath had been put away for a long time. God's not accepting what they're doing. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? He's not accepting what they're doing. So, Galatians 3. What is the purpose of the law in this age? Huh? Oh, yeah. The purpose of the law in this age is to bring lost people to Christ and to get them out from under the penalty of the law. Galatians 3 verse 22, it says, "But the Scripture hath concluded all under sin." Now, whereas the Jews thought the Gentiles were excessive sinners, and we are, but they were still sinners too. Well, in this age, everybody, the law hath concluded, the Scripture hath concluded all under sin, Jew or Gentile, that the promise by faith of Jesus Christ might be given to them that believe. That means either Jew or Gentile. We all get saved the same way in this age. But before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up under the faith, which should afterwards be revealed. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after that faith has come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster. Very simple words. No longer under a schoolmaster. So what that law does, you say, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. And you say, well, I've done that. You've broken it. What you need is Jesus Christ. What you need is the grace of God. Get under the grace of God, and guess what? You're no longer under. No longer under the law. Now, when I say that, you say, you mean we can murder? I've been waiting to hear that. No, what I'm saying is that if you did break the law, if you did, not that you wouldn't pay for it, because if I'm on the jury, I'm going to convict you. I'm going to send you to prison for a lifetime if I can. I'll send you to the gallows. You don't want me on your jury. I don't care if you're saved or not. If you murder somebody with malice aforethought, it's not self-defense, but it's out-and-out murder, you should die. Every Christian that believes this book should believe that. Paul said, if I've done anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. In other words, kill me. If I've done something worthy of death, kill me. You should kill me. So these Christians are, we just love everybody and let the mass murderer go and the pedophile go and the rapist go. No. Kill them. If we would be able to turn all these jails into schoolhouses. Of course, that doesn't sound that great. Probably need them as jails for a while. Because you could just about empty the jails with those that did crimes worthy of death. You know, a murderer, you're to take no sacrifice, or you're to take no, what's the word? Now I can't think of it. Satisfaction for a murderer. There's nothing that can satisfy the law except for the blood of that man. You know what that does? That keeps down murder. Because if you know you're going to die, and you don't have to wait 10 years, 20 years for it, it's a deterrent. That's where the problem is. You make somebody wait, 20 years. Yeah. But he says there that we're no longer under this, after we get saved, we're no longer under that schoolmaster. And what that means is this: that law cannot impact you to put you in hell anymore. You understand? That law cannot condemn you anymore. Because you're under grace, you're not under the law. That's all that is. As far as you violating things, you'll find out the reason that God gave the law is quite different than what you might think. Turn to Romans chapter 13, and we're going to have to quit with this. Morning. Come on in. We're just finishing up Sunday school. Romans chapter 13, look at verse 8 to 10. What you're going to find out here is the reason why we keep the commandments is more for testimony than anything else. It can't condemn you anymore, but why do we keep them? We keep them so that other people can see that we're not lawbreakers. Even though every Christian knows he's a sinner that deserves to go to hell, but yet he's trying to keep a law that never could get him there. Look at Romans 13, verse 8. He says, owe no man anything but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. So this is about your duty to your fellow man. For this, look what he says, verse 9, for this thou shalt not commit adultery. Because you wouldn't do that to somebody else, steal somebody else's husband or somebody else's wife. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, you notice he doesn't mention the Sabbath. Because that's not a testimony you have to keep to your neighbor. But all these others, you keep those because God asked you to keep those and not to violate those, as not only because it's right and good, but it's a testimony to them, because it certainly can't condemn you anymore. You're no longer under a schoolmaster. So you're doing it more for testimony's sake than anything. Thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. If there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love, if you truly love your neighbor, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. You know, when you truly love somebody, you don't do those things to them. You don't steal from them. You don't take their wife or their husband. You don't commit adultery or steal or bear false witness or covet their stuff. You do right by them. And the only way you're going to win them to Jesus Christ is by doing right by them. And so they can see this. This is your testimony before them. That law can't condemn you. You're under grace. You're in Christ. But it sure can condemn them, can it? All right. All right, we'll stop with that. We've covered a huge chunk of things. Next week we'll probably be able to finish it, I think. We're talking about keeping the Sabbath day and why a Christian is not an obligation to keep the Sabbath day. Okay, any questions? All right, let's take a break till about